Alejandro Flores Maya, ATENEA Method, Complete Audiobook, Self-Defense Guide Against False Claims of Gender Violence. One of the implications of the sexual division of labor that exposed men to the wild, natural world, while keeping women safe within the tribe, involves the allocation of vital roles in the process of species survival. While men were responsible for obtaining material resources, food, shelter, and tools for protection, women dedicated themselves to the important task of teaching customs, that is, the dissemination of culture. In contemporary times, called the Information Age by Manuel Castells, where the skills to connect and communicate ideas are given a central place, men find it difficult to adapt to these dynamics from which they were excluded for centuries. Proof of this is that the influencer market is predominantly dominated by women. According to Statista, 84% of influencers are women. Furthermore, 77% of influencers who successfully monetize their content are women. This data highlights the disparity that exists between men and women in the field of cultural diffusion on the internet. This creates a series of problems for men. First, their networks are smaller, so the number of people they can connect with is smaller when sharing information. Second, the engagement they have on social networks is up to 5 times lower than that of women. So even within the few people they connect with, they have difficulties generating interaction. This, in real life, means that when it comes to spreading a piece of information, those with the best chances of reaching a greater audience are women. This situation has not been overlooked or unnoticed, to the point that there have been groups that have exploited it. Hence, the problem of being targeted on social networks, as well as the false allegations and accusations that affect the lives of thousands of men every year, is growing exponentially, and it is necessary to stop it in some way. In strictly legal terms alone, there have been investigations that highlight the difficulty of proving whether one is the victim of a false accusation. For example, investigations such as Canon's reveal that up to a third of rape accusations were unfounded or ruled as without evidence, something similar to that reported by Judah, who estimates that the number could be as high as 50%, but that if it is at a lower percentage, it is due to the dubious methodology used to determine whether an accusation is false, and that may be leading to an underreporting of cases. In addition to the above, the testimonial part should also be highlighted, where the text hyenas, family lawyers against false accusations, serves as support. This book portrays how the presentation of false accusations in custody trials has become a common practice, sometimes incited by the lawyers themselves as an effective way to exert pressure on the other party. Under this approach, the book seeks to be a guide for innocent men who are victims of the whole situation, who see their lives and those of their loved ones affected. At no point is it intended to ignore or deny the existence of gender violence or the existence of violent men. On the contrary, a categorical statement is made that violence against women must be eradicated in all its forms and that victims must have access to justice. It is based on the belief that the existence of false allegations also affects women, as it diminishes the importance and visibility of the real victims. The current situation with this problem reveals a broken system that leaves thousands of women victims of violence unprotected, while allowing innocent men to be behind bars or see their lives destroyed by a false accusation. Solving this problem should concern everyone. Finally, in this book there are no manipulation techniques, social engineering, much less anything that could be considered illegal. If we want change, we must lead by example. Warning: ATENEA proposes a legitimate method of defense against false accusations, so innocence is the central component for all the strategies or tools presented here. The manual will be useless for those who know they are guilty and seek to find a way to avoid the consequences of their actions. ATENEA fights for justice, never for impunity. The adverse scenario faced by men in spreading their testimonies in cases of false allegations lands in the manual below. The ATENEA Method, named after one of the most revered deities of the Greek pantheon, and who is primarily associated with strategy and war. Her birth is unique. She emerged fully armed from the head of Zeus, Athena is not a figure of power and brute force. She is the embodiment of wisdom and has served as a guide to various heroes to achieve victory through intelligence. Precisely for this reason, we consider it necessary that she be the goddess chosen to assist us in this war that has been undertaken against men. So in the same way that countless soldiers invoked her to provide them with protection, wisdom, and, ultimately, victory, you too will bring her with you at all times to defend yourself, if necessary, from these mechanisms of social destruction set in motion against you. It is understood that the book may be controversial, but we must also appeal to empathy to understand the seriousness of the current context that makes the existence of this book a necessity. The objective is to provide men with the necessary tools to balance the scales and give them an opportunity to spread their truth, all within the framework of strategies that are used in their legitimate defense. The shield. Athena, in all her representations, is surrounded by symbolic elements, of which we will highlight two: the shield and the spear. The former has had various appearances in mythology. However, one of the most notable is when it was used by Perseus to defeat Medusa, by making her reflect her own gaze in the shine of the shield, and thus turn into stone. At that moment, the hero, assisted by the goddess, put an end to a reign of terror symbolized by the sculptures of the petrified men who found their tomb in the beast's lair. In the same way that it is handed over to you today, to end the media terrorism unleashed against you. One of the things that must be understood is that in order to defend oneself, one needs to build a shield, and this must use the same tools and strategies that have been put in place to destroy men. This shield will consist of two elements: a public image with an impeccable reputation, and a solid social circle. Building the shield. Building a network of trust and support. This chapter will focus on giving you the tools to build one of the building blocks of your shield against false allegations, a strong social circle. One reality that almost no one wants to talk about is male loneliness. Most men live lonely lives, at least according to data from the Center for American Life Surveys, which reveals that only 1 in 5 men considers having received emotional support from a friend in the last week before answering the survey. And it also makes clear that young people are affected by this reality, considering that only 1 in 5 men between 18 and 29 years old would turn to a friend first when faced with a problem. Safe circles where men can socialize with their peers in order to build bonds are becoming fewer and fewer, and are becoming more and more the object of attack and criticism, which makes friendship and support between men difficult. This translates into a very simple reality. Most men have to face their problems alone. Needless to say, taking such a stance and dealing with this situation is a huge mistake. The power of a false claim lies in its ability to spread a message to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. Consider what successful cancellations have in common. They all get channeled through groups that spread the message until it reaches an audience large enough to make the case go viral. An example of the above is found in the case of Jennifer Seifert in Mexico. As founder of the National Front Against Vicarious Violence, she used her group's networks to generate virality and thus obtain interviews in front of major media outlets, from where she capitalized on her narrative against vicarious violence to spread her version of the trial against her ex-husband Alejandro Romo. This helped her to exert pressure in her legal process and to access certain contacts that have allowed her to take custody of her children from her ex-partner. In contrast, Alejandro Romo, not having such a large network, has not been able to position his version of the story, despite having videos where his daughter explicitly declares having been a victim of violence under her mother's care. In any other case, this should be more than enough evidence for him to have custody. However, due to the lack of exposure and dissemination, he has not achieved the transcendence he needs to attract public attention. Therefore, in order to counteract this snowball that is beginning to form against you, you need a circle of trust that is large enough to suppress the narrative that is being formed against you, while simultaneously promoting your version of events. The key question then is, How can I build a circle of trust with these characteristics? The first step is to understand what social capital is. According to Bourdieu, social capital is measured by the resources that come from the size and quality of your network of contacts. Think about it for the situation at hand. A false allegation. If you needed to send your testimony of innocence to a media outlet, do you have someone you could contact? If you needed a lawyer, do you know one? Do you know someone who could introduce you to one? If the answer to these questions is no, then you are in trouble. In this sense, before anything else, you should make a diagnosis of your social network, for which the following scheme may be useful. Once filled out, start asking yourself the relevant questions. How many people really form part of my network? What do these people do? How can they help me at a given moment to face this situation? Now, don't worry if at first you don't have the answers to these questions, or if the answers are discouraging. What you need in any case is to expand your social circle and go deeper into it. So, it's not enough to just start meeting a lot of people. You also need to start meeting the right people. To do this, in his book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Carnegie offers a key idea. Show genuine interest in people. How many journalists have you missed because you didn't ask the stranger at the bar what he does for a living? How many lawyers have you passed up because you were looking at a girl at a party instead of paying attention to the man in front of you? An exercise you should start doing to improve the quality of your networking is, in fact, getting to know the contacts you make. Show interest in them. Ask them about their life story, their motivations, their ideas. Always try to be polite and friendly. Ask more questions than statements. Save the latter for when they explicitly ask you for them. The reality is that deep down people like to talk about themselves. If you are a good listener, they will orbit around you. This is the first step in building trust with people. Now, becoming a valuable asset within a social network comes with the ability to connect members of that network with each other. In network theory, one of the measures to determine the importance of a person has to do with their centrality. That is, the person at the center of the network is the one who interconnects the greatest number of people. Do you know a carpenter looking for work and his friend just broke his chair? Put them together. Is your friend going through a divorce and you know a good lawyer? Put them together. This ability to mobilize resources among your network of contacts will give you an increasingly central and therefore more important role within that network. These activities, getting to know people, taking a genuine interest in them, identifying needs and resources within your network, connecting people with needs with those who have the resources to meet them, will improve the quality of your network in just a few months. This is because the people within your network will open doors to their circles, and you will create a virtuous circle. The more people you meet, the better your ability to connect them. The better your ability to connect people, the more people they will introduce you to. Properly implemented, you could take advantage of something known as the small world theory, or the 6 degrees theory, proposed by Milgram. This theory essentially says that in a world as interconnected as ours, we are all at most 6 people away from each other. So with enough skill and consistency, your networking can reach a level where you could connect with virtually anyone. Thus, when the time comes, and if necessary, you will have a network of contacts that will allow you to mobilize and share your testimony of innocence with the people who can truly support you at a given moment. The main objective of having this network is to make it reach the mass media. Now, the dynamics of dealing with the media and integrating them into your network of trust is exactly the same as with any other person, knowing what the media needs and being able to provide it. In the 21st century, this comes down to the famous attention economy, where audience attention is directly proportional to revenue generation for media companies. Therefore, you must be able to offer the media in question enough visibility to make it attractive for them to take on your case. This translates into greater social capital equals greater likelihood of getting the attention of a media outlet. In the end, it is about sharing your testimony with as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time you can. Simultaneously, you can counteract the lies that are told about you. Now, what comes next is giving them as many tools as possible to support you. That's something we'll work on in the next chapter, when we talk about the second element of the shield, your public image. T. Work on prevention. The best way to deal with a false allegation is to avoid the false allegation in the first place. To achieve this, there are different aspects that you must take care of to prevent getting into this situation. In this chapter, we will focus on this preventive work, and we will encompass it under one aspect, taking care of your public image. In order for people to believe your truth, they must be able to empathize with you, and in cases like these, they will not be able to know you directly. They will only be able to know what their contacts tell them, what the media shows, and the public information to which they can have access. There are two basic principles to understanding public image. 1. Image is based on perception, and 2. We all have a public image that we project all the time. Therefore, you should forget about the existence of a private image. Your behavior, even in the most intimate of your circles, is already public image. If there were a private image, it would be the one you have of yourself in your mind, but that begins and ends with you. So, you need to understand that your public image is built from your closest friends and most trusted people to your most extended circle. So, the key concept here is consistency. Everyone you meet should have a similar perception of you, or at least a consistent account of your behavior. Ultimately, the association you should have already reached is that behavior equals public image. In other words, it is what you do. In that sense, you should try to behave the same way with everyone. This will minimize any doubt that may exist regarding you. Think about it. If your closest friends are asked to describe you at a trial, and each one describes a completely different person, what do you think they are going to think of you? Since none of them really know you, this gives rise to the reasonable doubt of assuming that there could be a version of you that could end up being guilty. On the contrary, if you asked several people at a trial, from your closest friends to colleagues, even that Uber driver who once served you, and they all described the same person, with some minor differences in perception, then there will be no room for doubt about who you are. The possible suspicion that there is a hidden part of you that absolutely no one, in any context, under any circumstances, knows sounds illogical, and therefore it is possible to dismiss it. Let's take an example. Johnny Depp. During his trial against Amber Heard for defamation, millions of people came out to defend Johnny. How? Simple. They flooded all social networks with videos showing Johnny being kind, pleasant, gentlemanly, calm. Videos where he said good morning to the security guards at the trial. Videos where he went to greet and thank his fans. Videos where he socialized with fans and colleagues. In interviews, altogether they showed a consistent image. So when Amber Heard published the video of her argument with Johnny Depp, where he looked upset, the court of public opinion came to the conclusion that this was not normal for him. Something must have happened. There must be a reason for this atypical behavior. Added to that is that all the witnesses described a behavior consistent with that of the first videos when they were asked about Johnny Depp. Calm, pleasant, friendly. Check out the second part on our channel. If you are interested in this book, please support the author and buy it on Amazon.